G'day and welcome to Unpopular Reefing. This is going to be my 1-year review of keeping a seagrass aquarium. What you're currently looking at was my very first attempt at growing a seagrass aquarium. And I'm just going to be going through everything I've learned as the tanks progress throughout time. Okay, so the first thing I learned was seagrass, you want to have a deep substrate. The second thing I learned is that the paddle grass, which I believe is Havala ovalis, it's sometimes called turtle grass, whatever, grows a lot quicker than the bladed grass. You can in fact grow it with pretty much nothing other than a light and some flow of water. So this next shot is what the tank looked like about a month later. Now, if you're wondering what happened to all the seagrass, the second thing I learned about seagrass is that amphipods find it delicious. And although initially excited when I noticed that amphipods were breeding and multiplying in my tank, soon it became a swarm, and then there was no seagrass left. So then I got some fish in to try and control the pod population, which worked, but the seagrass or algae never really picked up again, and just sort of the water was cloudy and the tank looked like garbage. Around this point I decided that keeping crabs might be fun, which anyone who has kept crabs would tell you it is not. Crabs are assholes. They will uproot all of your plants, they will disrupt your hardscape, they will eat your fish, and this one would even jump out of the tank several times and go scuttling around the house in the middle of the night. If you haven't heard the sound of a crab crawling up your walls at 3 in the morning, I assure you it is something straight out of a horror film. So this brings me to the last video I recorded in my old tank. It's pretty sad looking, and that is why I eventually shut it down. And took everything that I learned about what not to do, and that led me into my 320 gallon tank. Now this is what my new 320 litre system looked like. I'd added all my little school of glassfish, my 2 big mullet. I was especially proud of this rock right here. A perfect coating of green algae and this very iridescent pink algae growing on it, except my cleanup crew got a bit too enthusiastic and, well, cleaned it up. And then it was just a bare rock, which found its way out of the aquarium eventually. Now, a lot of this seagrass was recently planted. I have really bad cyano at this point, but it was a new tank, so I was happy to deal with it. I added this piece of kelp as kind of an experiment just to see how it would do. Short answer, not too well. The urchins did enjoy eating it though, so I guess that's a plus. It was about this time the water finally cleared up and allowed me to take a few better photos of what I had going on. You can see here the newly added sand goby resting majestically on top of my favourite piece of algae. Truly he is a prince among fish. And this here, the pink algae, looked really good. While it was alive, it did die quite quickly. I think it's a coralline algae. It may have needed a higher alkalinity. And this shot of the red algae is really great. I do love the shimmering effect from the kessels. Now this is just a good overview of everything I had going on the tank at the time. At this point I was merely adding every single type of algae I could find, putting it in the tank and just seeing what stuck. You can see the urchin there is eating the kelp. And I've added an anemone as well. So this picture was taken when I was possibly happiest with my tank. Even though the kelp at the back is dying and I would remove it a few days later, most of the algae was growing, the fish were happy. There wasn't a lot of seagrass happening, but I did have a carpet of algae growing at the front of the tank, which I thought was cool. So the tank might not look a lot different in this video. It was taken only a few days after that photo where I was happiest with my tank. The difference in this image being, obviously, there are no fish. So this was taken after I had a catastrophic tank crash and basically everything, including my cleanup crew, died. So I took this opportunity to be a little experimental if I'm going to have to start from scratch. So I added a few new species of hermit crab. I added some more kelp, which didn't last very long, but the hermit crabs seemed to think it was delicious. I added a few extra snails, a few starfish, which then turned out to eat the snails, which then in turn got eaten by, I believe it was probably my resident gorilla crab that just seems to leave the fish alone, but apparently, yeah, starfish are high up on his menu. I even added some pink nippers that we commonly use for bait over here. They sort of tunneled into the sand and I never saw them again. But this is the point where I added my least favourite fish, and I feel it deserves its own video of 101 reasons why not to keep them. I caught them in a small school, so I thought that'd be friendly, but they immediately killed every other smaller fish in the tank and then turned on each other.
Yay!
I started with 6, and by the time there was just 2 left, I caught them and chucked them straight back into the ocean. It was about this time that I would go through a very bad red cyano outbreak covering the tank. I tried everything, manual removal, lowering phosphate, a lot of things. I couldn't really understand why it was so bad all of a sudden, but in hindsight it appears that come summertime, the tank heats up to about 25-26 degrees, which is normal reef tank temperature, which the cyano loves. I found the best way to actually get rid of it is just let the tank drop down to about 23-22 degrees and it'll just go away by itself. You don't have to do anything else. So after I got most of the cyano cleared up, I planted a lot more seagrass. Not so much algae anymore. A lot of it died back during the cyano outbreak, but I've got quite a bit of the bladed seagrass growing fairly happily at this point. So after yet another cyano outbreak killed most of my seagrass, it has a tendency to grow up and cover the leaves and stems and stop it from photosynthesizing, and then it dies out. I decided I'd put some new hardscape in, and I've got this bootstrap caulerpa that I put at the back there. Its advantages of this is the fish and the cleanup crew don't seem to eat it, so it lasts a lot longer than the other types of algae I use. And the hardscape was just basically to get something for other sorts of algae to grow on, to anchor to. And it was about this point that it was midway through summer and the tank was consistently 24-25 degrees, and I thought I would invest in some corals. You can see right at the back there, there's some pulsing xenia. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So you can see there the cyano is starting to die back a little bit, and got a bit more growth on the paddle grass up the front. I've planted another species of brown algae at the back there, and you can see the pulsing xenia in the background there, and there's a bit more of it sticking to the rockscape here, which is why I put it in there, and just about to be photobombed by the fish I hate more than anything else in the world. Such a jerk for such a boring fish. Anyway, it wouldn't be too long for this tank back in the ocean before you know it. So this brings me neatly along to how my tank looks today. The pulsing xenia took off, as pulsing xenia has a tendency to do. The caulerpa, bootstrap caulerpa up the back is doing fairly well. The paddle grass is coming in and going out. I've pretty much got no bladed grass left in at the moment. I'm planning to replant a bit now that we're coming on into winter. Because it's going to be getting cooler, I'm assuming the xenia is going to die off completely, and I'm hoping that the algae will bloom significantly, and hoping that the seagrass as well, I can get it to really get a hold, so by the time next summer spins around, it won't struggle as much as it has this summer. So what have I learnt in 1 year of keeping a seagrass aquarium? First lesson, start with a deep substrate. It's just good practice. The roots need to go into something. You'll save yourself headaches. It's good for the rest of your tank as well. Got good bacteria. Deep substrate. Good start. Number 2, you want to have small fish to keep your pods under control, or they will just decimate your grass before it has a chance to actually, take effect. Choose your cleanup crew wisely. They can often eat seagrass, or if they don't, they just uproot it and destroy it. So mostly large hermit crabs, things like that, I'd steer away from them. Number 4, algae seem to prefer it cold, and the seagrass. Well, at least the strains that grow where I live seem to, which would make sense because the oceans are cold here. So, you know, if your seagrass grows in warmer oceans, then maybe that's irrelevant. 5, added benefit to keeping a cold tank is cyanobacteria hates the cold. So that we won't have to deal with that issue if you keep your tank below about 24 degrees. The last thing that I'd noticed is that flow seems to have little effect on the grass. Doesn't seem to improve the growth or anything. What it does seem to do is uproot it in most cases and blow it around your tank. You obviously need some flow. You got to have the filtration running, but additional power heads and things, I wouldn't worry about them. They don't seem to have any real benefit, and the downside is that they will blow sand around and, you know, destroy your substrate. Alright, I feel this video has gone on long enough. If you were able to gain anything from the scant knowledge presented in this video, maybe give us a like. And if you want to see more of this, I'll be doing a few more experiments with seagrass and maybe an outdoor tank. And I'll be giving a rundown of the livestock that I currently have as well in the future. So if you want to see that, give us a subscribe and check us out.